Nora?
Wow, comadres, how exciting. This is fabulous. We had a bunch of people register. We always knew that you all love to cook and love to eat. Yum, yum. So here we are. Maria and I started talking about these things that you all had mentioned you wanted to know more about. And cooking was one of the very first things that came to mind. And then one of the first people that also came to mind for me was Comadre Lola, because I have known Lola for a very long time. And when we first met, she wasn't cooking. I guess she was cooking, but she wasn't doing it professionally. And then next thing I knew, out of the Orange County area, I went to an event and there she was. She had a table and she had food and all kinds of wonderful things to share with us. And I was, oh my God, this is fabulous. So Lola Wiarco Dweck is a Mexican-American recipe developer, writer, and cooking instructor who loves sharing her culture with the world. Lola develops original recipes for national brands and teaches themed cooking classes while educating her audience about Mexican food and travel through her blog, Lola's Cocina. Her online marketplace, Lola's Mercadito, specializes in gourmet and personally curated items that celebrate Mexico. And she is a California native with a dual master's degree in business administration and in Latin American studies. And currently she lives in Colorado with 3 beautiful children and her husband. And the children are bilingual. When she's not working, Lola enjoys traveling, exploring new restaurants, listening to books and podcasts, and practicing yoga. Comadre Lola, take it away.
Thank you, Nora. Just to add on to that introduction, I've been part of the Comadres network for over 10 years. I think I joined first in 2000, let me think. In 2010, when I moved to San Diego, I had never lived in San Diego before because I'm originally from the LA area, and I needed to connect with other Latinas. So I joined that network and made friends immediately. I hosted a few comadrazos at my home in San Diego. And then I moved to Washington, D.C. a few years after grad school, or I was in grad school, then moved to Washington, D.C. And again, found myself in need of a support network and joined the local chapter out in Washington, D.C. And it's just been such a great community because I felt like immediately I had a group of cousins and tias and just comadres to chat with and to share our culture with. So I studied Latin American studies and business administration, which led me on this journey. I've always had a passion for cooking, but it wasn't until I went to Oaxaca and did a lot of research on the cooking classes down there that I realized I could turn this passion into something professional, which is when I started my website, Lola's Cocina. And since then, it's grown into a business where I'm contracted by companies to develop recipes for them. I do corporate cooking classes. And then I also am connected to Mexico because I go back almost every summer to curate different items for my online shop, which is really fun because I get to do that with my kids and it works around all of our schedule. Let me see. So today's workshop, just to give you a brief overview, is going to be on Aguas Frescas, which is one of the most popular beverages in Mexico. For me, it's a great alternative to the store-bought juices that are really high in sugar and sometimes have preservatives. Let me think. Aguas Frescas. I'm going to give you some fun facts on that. But before we get started on just the overview of the whole class, because I'm going to show you what we're going to be using, the ingredients. I know nobody's actually going to be cooking along because this is more of a demo, but you're going to receive the recipes and you'll be able to make both of these recipes after the class, whichever one you like, or both of them. So really quick, I want to introduce you to my sister, who is also literally my comadre because she baptized my daughter, Valentina. Her name is Lola Wiarco, and she's based out of the Las Vegas, so she's connected with the Las Vegas Comadres network, and she's going to go over just a few quick housekeeping items, and then we'll kick off the class.
So thank you, Lola. Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here. Just a few housekeeping items I wanted to cover before we kick off this event. The first is if you could please turn on your cameras if you're willing and able for the best experience. We love seeing your smiling, shining faces. Next is if you're not asking a question, we do ask that you mute yourselves. And actually on that note, if you would like to ask a question, we ask that you drop it in the chat, unless there's a Q&A portion at the very end. But we'll answer those questions that are dropped in the chat as they pop up. The next piece is there will be trivia questions asked by Lola, and the first person to respond to those questions will win a prize, and we'll ask that you send over your email and mailing address privately, separately after that. The last piece is if you do create any of these recipes, or not if, more when you do create these recipes, we ask that you tag Las Comadres and Las Lola's Cocina, and we'll drop those hashtags in the chat. So later when you create this, you can share it with the world.
Okay, so now we're going to start our class. And just to give you a few fun facts about Aguas Frescas. Aguas Frescas date back to Mesoamerica. The Mayans and the Aztecs used to muddle fruits and different herbs and flowers with water. And this was their version of Aguas Frescas, although I'm sure at the time it wasn't called Aguas Frescas. The most popular, I've read that it's called the Holy Trinity of Aguas Frescas, includes agua de Jamaica, which is hibiscus agua fresca, agua de horchata, the one that's made with rice, and then agua de tamarindo. And I'm guessing that these are considered the Holy Trinity because these are ingredients that you can stock up and have in your pantry year round, where most of the other aguas frescas you find are made with fresh fruits and ingredients that are found, surrounding the season. A lot of the popular ones include agua de sandia, watermelon, pineapple, cantaloupe, tuna, which is prickly pear in English. And then, yeah, like I said, horchata, rice, and flor de Jamaica and tamarindo are the other ones that are not made with fruits. Today, we're going to be making 2 separate aguas frescas. I'm going to let you vote on one, and then the other one is already set. So let me just ask, and you can put in the chat. We're going to be making an agua fresca de piña, so a pineapple agua fresca, but you have the option. We can make it the way I have it on my website, which is pineapple with cucumber and mint, if we want mint in that, or the way you see it oftentimes in Mexico is pineapple with spinach. And you can also keep it simple if you don't like any of those, but I'm going to be making one of those 2. So if you can just type in the chat box which you prefer, with cucumber or with spinach, and then we'll make that after I make the first one. The first one is one that you probably won't see too often. It's made with avena, which is oatmeal. I just use old-fashioned oats for this one. Cinnamon, dates, I sweeten it with dates, and a pinch of salt, and then a hint of vanilla. This has been referred to as oat milk, oat water, oat chata. It goes by a lot of different names. And I kind of thought it was interesting when I started seeing oat milk pop up in the markets, because when I tasted agua de avena in Mexico, I thought, wait, this is the same thing that everyone is calling oat milk in the States. And it's been consumed in Mexico for years and years. And it's kind of like a hip thing to drink here now. But when I tasted it, it reminded me a lot of agua de horchata. Although I think this one is even easier to make than horchata because you don't have to soak rice. You don't have to add any, a lot of horchata recipes include nuts, but this one is simple. Just if you don't have dates, because dates are not an ingredient that I realize everyone stocks up in their home, you can always use sugar. And then I'm going to offer you some ideas for other sweeteners to use also. But for the agua de piña, I will be using just regular sugar, so you can see how I use that. So these, I think, are most ingredients that you can find in people's homes. I always start with between 4 and 6 cups of water when I'm making an agua fresca, and I go and I test my recipes like that. So when I'm at home, I don't actually follow any recipes. I just use my blender, add water, start mixing my fruit and straining it. But for class purposes and so that you can replicate the recipes, I do want to provide the recipes, which are both on my website. For tools, the most important tools for aguas frescas are a strainer, because you're going to strain after you blend. So a blender is first and foremost, the most important, even though back in the Aztec times, they didn't use blenders, they used to muddle them by hand. So if you don't have a blender, you can always muddle. A strainer, and for this one, I like to use a strainer and cheesecloth because I don't like to get any of the avena in my agua. I like it to be nice and smooth. Or if you know how to make the homemade nut milks, you know what this is. This is the nut bag to strain, which makes it even cleaner so you don't get anything in there. And then obviously measuring cups, measuring spoons. For some of the garnishes, I like to use a potato peeler. And then obviously cute glasses. Any pictures that you have will work. In Mexico, when you see Aguas Frescas, they're often sold in, they have really big versions of this set up along counters where they have the different flavors, probably the most popular flavors that sell, which is typically agua de piña con espinacas, lime juice, lime agua fresca with chia seeds, watermelon, and then sometimes you'll even see a coconut one. But so now let's get started on our agua de avena while you guys are thinking about which other one you want to make with the pineapple. Here I have my blender. I'm going to be going through all of the steps because I understand we all have different cooking levels, different skills, especially even in my family among my sisters. So I might be doing stuff that seems like, wow, I already know how to do that, but that's okay because some people don't. And I think it's better to teach from a very basic level so that everybody knows what we're doing here. Here I have my blender.
As a quick side note, we took a quick poll on individuals who have made, or if individuals have made aguas frescas before, and you're right, there's a big range. There's people who have never made any and some who've been taught by you.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. Okay, yeah, my sister's going to be asking questions in the chat too, and then just make sure you're listening to fun facts because that's going to be part of the trivia in the end, and you can win something from my shop. So like I said, for this one, I'm going to be starting with 4 cups of water. And then I like to use whole cinnamon, but you can use powdered cinnamon, you can use whatever you have on hand. And this is the kind I like to use. In the grocery stores, you'll see one that's a little bit thicker like this, or you'll see ones that are really tightly, just a super tight little cinnamon stick. And I like the bigger, thicker ones. I think they have better flavor. You can use however much you want. This is probably about 5 inches. Maybe
Well,
I'll cut this in half.
We had a quick question in the chat. Is the water room temperature or cold?
It's room temperature because these are always served on ice. So if you have a filter or your refrigerator shoots out cold water, that's fine. It can be cold, it can be room temperature. That doesn't really make a difference. But mine is room temperature. And then let's see. So here I have my cinnamon. I'm going to add some vanilla. And I always like to plug Mexican vanilla wherever you get it, real Mexican vanilla, because it is so much more flavorful. And if you know anything about vanilla, you've probably heard that all vanilla from throughout the world derives from Mexican vanilla beans, vanilla, the Mexican vanilla orchid. So yeah, to me, it has much more flavor than anything you're going to find from the other countries that produce vanilla. So this is a date. Some people don't know what a date looks like. These are actually from California. I love them. They're super fresh, super soft. You have to take out the pits before you blend. Otherwise, you might ruin your blender. So they're really easy to take out. You just split them open. And if you don't have dates, like I said, some of the alternative sweeteners that I like to use are agave, honey, regular honey. When I do use sugar, I like to use organic pure cane sugar. For this one, I actually think piloncillo could work, but you would have to make it into a syrup because it comes in a cone and it's really hard. You can't really blend it. But I have had the luck of let me just show you, finding panela molida, which is ground piloncillo at Whole Foods, which is interesting because I hadn't seen it. I always see recipes that say to grate your piloncillo, which I think is a joke because you'll break your grater literally before you are able to grind a piece of piloncillo, unless it's super fresh, which you won't find super fresh piloncillo here. Okay, so first I like to blend these things because you don't want to blend the oats for longer than necessary. I'm gonna
along the line of blendings, we had a couple of questions pop in. One is, I always have issues blending dates. They don't. Is there a tip for it? And how many dates?
Okay, I used 6 dates for this recipe, but that's a tu gusto, however many, because dates can be really sweet, so they can add a lot of sweetness. But just remember, we are going to be straining this, so you're not going to get the chunks of dates. Regarding they don't blend, that could be related to your blender, because this blender can blend even the pits of dates, which I've done accidentally. So my recommendation would be to get dates that are as fresh as possible. I know Costco sells the medjool dates with the pits, and they also sell the ones that are not pitted. And I have found the ones that already have the pits removed, they're smaller and they're harder. So I don't like to get them. I prefer to get them with the pits and remove them. And also maybe if you use a little bit more liquid and blend it a little longer. So I think the main problem is the freshness of the dates. And then, because even I've used blenders that are not this powerful and they do blend them, but they leave little chunks. It's never going to be super smooth with a blender that's not super powerful, but that's okay because you're going to strain this. So, but for a smoothie, I like my pits to be pretty blended, and you can only do that in a super heavy duty blender. So let me blend. Thank you for asking questions. I feel like this makes the class more interactive and less awkward for me, for sure. I'm going to put myself on mute for a second so that I can blend.
While she puts herself on mute, I'll ask a question for the chat. What are some of your favorite agua fresca flavors?
Okay, I'm back. You only blend for a few seconds, literally about 10 to 15 max. And you can see that it's blended. You can still see chunks on the bottom. That's okay because it's going to be strained. And then now I'm going to add 1 cup of avena.
And as you do that, Lola, we had a question come in about how much vanilla?
Vanilla, I use 1 teaspoon. That's also, if you like a lot of vanilla flavor, you can add more. Or if you don't like vanilla, you don't have to add vanilla. But I like, I forgot to add the little pinch of salt. Let me add that. And what salt does, it just brings out the natural sweetness in the ingredients that we're using. That's a little nice touch. Let me mute for a second. One more.
And from the responses in chat, it looks like we have a lot of sandia lovers in there, Jamaica, mango, melon. I'm seeing pineapple in there, blueberry with mint. That sounds delicious.
Ooh.
Lime, pineapple, strawberry. That combo sounds amazing. We've got some new ones in here that I've definitely never seen.
Yeah, I have made a pineapple with blueberry, pineapple with cucumber and mint. That's the thing I love about Aguas Frescas. You can really tailor them to whatever flavors you like. Let me see. I'm just going to use a strainer for this, just because I feel like most people probably use a strainer instead of a nutmeg. And I'm going to, if you have like a thin linen, if you don't have cheesecloth, you can always use a thin linen, or you don't even, let's just try it without today. It's going to have a little bit of residue, which you're probably used to, like when you make horchata, but that's okay. I do like mine really thin, because aguas frescas are not meant to be like nectars. They're not supposed to be thick. They're really thin, but have a ton of flavor. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you made a comment about piloncillo. Do you mind educating me mainly on what the difference is between piloncillo and brown sugar for those of us who may not know?
From what I understand, yes, piloncillo is the most raw form of sugar that you can find. I didn't bring a cone, I have it in my pantry, but it comes in the cone shape or in a disc shape typically, and it is literally just the juice from the cane of sugar that's been extracted and then put into these molds. And I believe it's heated so that it takes its form. But it has a really natural sugar. It tastes like the sugar cane, where brown sugar is made with molasses. So it's a little bit different in flavor and then a little bit more processed. But yeah, if you don't have piloncillo, a lot of recipes do substitute brown sugar for piloncillo. which I think is a good substitute because not everybody knows how to work with the piloncillo cone. And then this is a really important step. I have a friend who made one of my aguas and she said that it was really chunky and nobody liked it. And then I said, well, what kind of strainer did you use? And she said, strainer, what's a strainer? I said, oh Lord, yeah, no, it's not supposed to be like a smoothie at all. You're definitely skipping a step if you don't strain.
Do you ever add, we had a question come in, do you ever add chili or cayenne pepper to your aguas frescas?
I don't add to my aguas frescas. I've seen a lot of cocktails that use aguas frescas as a base and they'll add like a jalapeno or different. I actually haven't had an agua de tamarindo in Oaxaca with chile ancho. That was delicious. I like to add spice more as a garnish by rimming the glass because if you make the entire batch with chile and not everybody likes it, then you can risk, wasting a whole batch of agua fresca.
And I think sometimes we go places and assume everyone's a chili eater, and then you find when you get there that they may not be. So that's a great point.
Exactly. And another thing is a lot of people assume that everything related to Mexican food is spicy, and it's not. I like to add spice to my food on the side with a salsa or with a chile that I bite. I don't like my food to be spicy when I bite into it. So you can see right here through this screen how much is left. I could probably strain this a little more if I were using the little bag and just squeeze it, but that's okay. This is all that's left. And you can see that it kind of takes on a bit of a brown color. That's just from the cinnamon and from the cinnamon and from the oatmeal. So that's this one. And this one is a little bit thick, but all aguas frescas are meant to be served over ice, which I in doing my research about, I was like, what is oat milk? What is everybody talking about, this oat milk craze? But the main difference is the way it's served. In Mexico, this would be served on plenty of ice, where oat milk is served kind of as a dairy substitute, like a milk. So it's served with cereal or, the way people drink oat milk or almond milk. So it's not ever really served on ice. I've used this. I don't know if any of you got onto that crazy phase of making the Dalgona coffee at the beginning of the pandemic, but I've used this as the base for my Dalgona coffee and it's really delicious. So it's good to mix into your coffee. It's good to drink just over ice by itself. Aguas frescas, they're called aguas frescas because they're made with fresh ingredients and they're meant to be consumed when they're fresh. So my recommendation is to drink them within drink them immediately, but for sure within 2 to 3 days, because I don't think they maintain their flavor. The one thing I remembered is the one agua fresca I don't strain. Sometimes I don't strain my strawberry because I don't really mind that to have chunks in it, unless it's a lot of strawberries and it's thick. It's definitely not meant to be thick like a nectar. It's supposed to be a lot thinner. But I don't strain my agua de sandia, my watermelon agua fresca, because as you know, watermelon has a lot of water. So when you blend it, it's already really thin. It's not like a thick drink. So this is our agua de avena. I'll show you how I serve it and garnish it when we're done with our other agua fresca. This one came out a little darker than normal, I think, because I used more cinnamon. But do we have a tally on whether people wanted their pineapple agua with spinach or without?
The overwhelming majority said cucumber.
Okay, perfect. Cucumber. Yeah. That's easy because I can show you that. Go ahead.
Perfect. Before we move on from that, we just had a question on the shelf life of piloncillo.
Oh, piloncillo can last forever, but that doesn't mean it's going to be soft. Like I said, you're not going to be able to grate it. It gets hard. The easiest way to use it in a recipe, I have a recipe on my website for piloncillo, like a spiced, kind of like a café de olla piloncillo syrup. So you rehydrate it by adding that entire cone to your pan with water, and then you can make a syrup out of it and then use that syrup in different ways. If I were making a simple syrup for this, I would probably make it out of piloncillo because I think that would go really well with the agua de avena flavors because it's already kind of spicy. I always say that this is a good agua fresca for the fall, but because it's served on ice, you can really drink it and enjoy it any time of year.
And I'll drop that recipe link in the chat.
Yes, all of our recipes will send in the chat and then probably in a follow-up email. So now I have blender number 2 for our pineapple agua fresca. And I'm gonna start from scratch because usually I get ahead of myself and I want to cut the pineapple and have it already ready to just start blending, but not everybody knows how to, like, the most not the most efficient, but the easiest way to cut a pineapple and to use it. I forgot my knife, so let me run and get it real quick.
As Lola goes and grabs that, I'll do a true or false question. Let's see how everybody does with this. True or false? Aguas frescas are always made with fruit.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay, we're gonna start with the pineapple. This is a pretty small one. It's not, I have another one that's about twice the size. But this is the size we're working with today. And my recipe calls for about half of this pineapple. So the way I like to cut it is I cut the top, the bottom, and then I hold it upright and take off the sides. So that if you want to have it in spears, you can. Let's see, I'm going to save this actually, because I might use part of it.
As you slice through that, Lola, the question was true or false. Aguas frescas are only made with fruit. Do you mind shedding some light on the answer?
Oh, that is definitely false, because aguas frescas, as I said in the beginning, can be made with one that I didn't know was a fruit was the tamarindo. I actually thought that was like I don't know what I thought it was, a seed or, but yeah, that's still considered a pod fruit. But we make it, like I said, out of grains. We made this one out of oatmeal and flowers. And I even saw that there was an agua fresca de hierbabuena, which I thought, how is that an agua fresca? I thought that would just be considered a tea. So I need to research that a little bit more. But no, yeah, you can make aguas frescas out of a lot of fun ingredients that are not just fruit. But the most popular are typically the ones I mentioned, the Holy Trinity and then fruits. And in Oaxaca, when you go to the mercados, especially the one in Tlacolula, you'll see tables of people selling even just the peel of the pineapple, because they make a really good pineapple vinegar, which I have not been able to make. Mine always gets moldy. So if you're ever there, try to buy a little bottle. Usually they're sold like in repurposed plastic bottles, but it's delicious, especially for making pickled jalapenos, pickled veggies, stuff like that. So if you saw how easy that was, I cut the edges off, and then I'm only going to use half of this, so I'm going to cut it in half. And I leave the core in because this blender can handle it. So I'm just going to cut this into big chunks. Doesn't have to be, if you have a regular blender, you might want to cut them into a little bit smaller chunks, just so that I can handle it. And then obviously you're going to use a little bit more water while you're blending. And I'm going to use for this one, I'm going to leave out the mint. We can use mint more as a garnish, but you can also add mint leaves. I have a lot of mint sprouting up. This is the only thing right now that's growing in my garden. And this pineapple is, I mean, not pineapple, this pepino is bigger than normal. So I'm going to only use half of it because my recipe calls for a whole big one, but this is even bigger than. And
Well,
this is just
question popped in really quick on how ripe should the pineapple be?
Oh, I forgot to show one trick that I do, which now it's not I always, when I'm at the store, I'm picking at all the pineapples, and the way I see if it's ripe is I hold the pineapple up by the leaves, and then if the middle leaves pop out easily, that means it's pretty ripe or close to being ripe. Because otherwise, other than that, it's kind of hard to tell when they're ripe. So whenever you go to the store, just if they're really not coming off and the pineapple weighs a lot, then it's probably not going to be ripe for at least a week and a half. But if it comes out really easily, you can probably use it within a few days. So you know what, it can be ripe, and if it's not ripe, you might have to use a little bit more sugar. So I prefer to use ripe fruit, because that means that you can use less processed sugar and use more just the natural sugar from the fruit. Oh, wanted to show you one trick that I always have done since we're little. I don't really know what it does, but I cut off the ends of the cucumber and then rub we've always been taught that it takes out the bitterness of the cucumber. I don't know if that's fact or fiction, but I've always done it. So we're going to do it today. And then I'm going to use half of this, leave this half aside. And again, cut this into big chunks. And this is a really good, you can make either of these individually with only cucumber or with only piña, and they're both really good on their own. And they also make a really good combination together. So for this one, I measured out already 6 cups of water.
And Lola, we
Like
got
I
a
s-
question on, can we peel the cucumber?
Oh, yes, you can definitely peel the cucumber, but that doesn't really make a difference because you are going to strain it. The reason I like to keep the peel is because I like my agua fresca to be green, so that people are like, ooh, what is that? They kind of think it's weird, and then they taste it and they love it. But yeah, when you peel it, it just comes out like a really soft, pretty, subtle green. And when you don't, it is a lot more bold color.
And I
Which I
feel
love.
like you get to have the added health benefit of the fiber from the peel.
Yeah, even though you do strain it out, but it gets processed in the blender. So I think you get a little bit more of that in this version. So you can see this one, I put the whole thing with 6 cups of water. And if you have a smaller blender, you're just going to do half of this at a time. So start with 3 cups at a time and then half of the fruit, or even a third if you feel like your blender's gonna blow. Always start on low and then you can add, make it faster.
Dr. Tina Valderrama made a comment about a friend taking a pineapple and putting it upside down in a corner for a bit. That's been a TikTok craze lately. I've seen a lot of people doing it where you remove the crown and put it crown side down for at least 2 days. And then that when you cut into the pineapple, it gives you a really juicy, sweet pineapple.
Oh, that's kind of like what we said to cook our turkey upside down and we said it came out juicier. I don't know if that's true or if we just made that up.
If it's fact or fiction, or if we just
we like to make up stuff in our family and we claim it's fact.
Yeah.
So for this, I would start with 1/4 cup to 1/2 cup of sugar. And it sounds like a lot, but you can see how big this pitcher is. But it's always better to start with less and then add sugar, because if you add more water, it can water down your drink and it's not going to be as strong in the pineapple and cucumber flavors.
So when you were introduced, we talked about you having a family with 3 children, your husband. How do you get your family involved in the kitchen?
My family, well, my kids have been cooking with me since they were little, since they could hold a spoon. And I feel that they now naturally they enjoy cooking, but it's because I've exposed them, even though it's hard with kids because they end up making a bigger mess than you want them to make in the kitchen, but including them from the minute they can stand up, or even when they're sitting, giving them things, like my little baby, I give him in the high chair, I think is really important in getting them to not only help making the foods that they're going to consume, but also in getting them to, like I said, to taste new foods, but to get comfortable in the kitchen. For me, it builds their confidence. I see my son when people are like, wait, what? You know how to fry your own tostadas? He's like, yeah, you want me to fry it for you? But that's because he's been cooking with me since he was a baby, and now he's 8 or 9 actually. So he's really comfortable. My daughter, I wasn't sure if she was gonna like cooking, but now she's definitely interested. She likes to be more guided when we're cooking together. And one of the things I also like to do with them, we call them field trips to different grocery stores. Here, we don't live in an area where we have access to a Mexican grocery store right around the block. I have to drive 20 to 30 minutes into Denver, which isn't bad because I know some people have to drive to different states or 4 hours to get some other stuff. So I have to drive into Denver, and then there's a Mexican grocery store we like, and then there's also an Asian grocery store that both have really beautiful produce options. So I tell them that they can pick anything from the produce area, the fruits, the veggies that they want to try, whether it's something they already know they like or something that they want to try that's new. Just so that they expand their palates and are open to trying different things and excited about it because they picked it. So, okay, One thing I forgot to show you with my agua de avena was I showed you the cinnamon, but these are the cinnamon sticks that my sister brings me from Tijuana. Very different from what you'll see in the store, which is often a lot smaller than this. And yeah, if you've been to the grocery store, a little tiny pack of 4 rolls is like $8, so it's not cheap. Yeah, but I love to get these big sticks the way they come in their natural form. I'm just gonna get my string bowl. Okay, so now again, the next step for this is to strain your ingredients. So I guess some people, my friend, when she made this one or something similar, didn't strain, which you're left with all of this chunky stuff, and that definitely not something that you want to be drinking in your agua fresca. And sometimes you need to agitate it so that it moves down.
And Lola, we're just a little past the halfway point. I wanted to check in and see if you wanted to do a trivia question while you do that.
Oh yes, that's perfect. Can we see what I have here? Okay, first question. What is considered the Holy Trinity of Aguas Frescas?
And remember, first correct response.
Yes. This is one part of the process that you might have to do, empty out your strainer so that it continues to strain when you add more. And then
we'll give everybody about 30 seconds left. I see a few answers, but we're waiting on you to give us the correct answer.
Okay, the correct answer, oh, we'll wait a few seconds. So as you saw, I made each agua fresca in a matter of about 5 minutes. And sometimes I'm invited to little get-togethers. And when you don't know what to make, I feel like an agua fresca is always a hit because it's not something that everybody knows how to make. It's not something that you can get everywhere. Well, if you're in California or in areas where you have the cool grocery stores that actually have really fresh agua frescas, I think that's cool, but we don't have that out here. Okay, so the answer to that trivia is agua de Jamaica, hibiscus, horchata, rice, and tamarindo, tamarind. Does anyone get that one?
Jamaica, horchata, and tamarindo.
Yes.
Yes. Corina Cuevas got tamarindo, Jamaica, and rice, which we know she means horchata.
Yes, perfect.
So Corina, if you want to direct message me your information, mailing address, we'll get that prize sent out to you.
Yeah, I think that for the prizes, people can just pick something that they want from the zero waste section of my online shop or whatever. Yeah.
And speaking of your online shop, I'll drop the link to Lola's Etsy page where you can find the chef's jacket she's wearing, a lot of the accessories she wears.
Oh yeah, you can't find this chef jacket. I got this custom made in Yucatan, but I have aprons.
Aprons.
I have aprons. I have cooking utensils, cute little spoons like this, beautiful hand embroidered huipiles, kitchen hand towels that are handmade by a family that I work with in Oaxaca, and hand tassels sewn on. I mean, everything is a work of art that you don't really see in areas where we get everything mass produced. This agua fresca came out absolutely perfect. I did use half a cup of water. One thing that I noticed about Mexican aguas frescas is that they're extremely sweet. And that's probably, I mean, the US and Mexico are neck and neck with tied with obesity and diabetes. Rates of diabetes are extremely high in both countries. I think because we both consume, overconsume certain, certain things, including sugar. And in Mexico, the aguas frescas to me are very, very sweet. I know that they're watered down with a ton of ice. So maybe the assumption is that as they sit on ice, they're going to get a little bit less sweet. But when I order an agua de Jamaica, I can dilute and use half of it and then add the rest of water. I don't like mine super sweet. So this one came out really good. I think most people would like the sweetness level in this that I used, but you can also cut that back. You can use agave, which is another sweetener that I like to use because it has a low glycemic index, which means it doesn't, like other sugars, and even including honey, when you consume them and they hit your bloodstream, it kind of gives that shock of sugar to your system immediately, where agave is more of a slow release, and it's a natural sugar, which I like. So when I'm making for my family, I will usually use either dates or agave. But in Mexico, we're typically using sugar. So that's the way I make this one. And now I'm going to just show you briefly how I like to serve, so that when you're hosting people or when you go to someone's house and you're trying to impress, you can wow the crowds. Let's see, let's do our pineapple first.
Before you kick that off, I have a few questions in the chat, Lola. The first is, what's the most challenging agua to make?
Well, the most challenging agua for sure for me is agua de tamarindo, because you have to boil the tamarindo. You can either peel it or boil it with the skin. But either way, you have to remove the skin, and then you have to get into the pulp and remove all of the string, the fibrous strings from around the little seeds. And you just want to be stuck with the pulp. Oh, so yeah, that's a process. It's worth it because the agua de tamarindo is really good and it has a lot of health benefits if you don't overload it with too much sugar. So really good for the digestive system, pretty much kind of like dates. But yeah, it's a process because you're peeling before or no matter what, there's no way around it unless you're just buying tamarindo pulp, which they do sell like in Middle Eastern stores. But if you want the real fresh tamarindo, you have to go through that process. But
so along
yeah,
those lines, and it's a little bit out of order, but the question came in about, can we use frozen fruit or frozen tamarindo?
Ooh, frozen tamarindo. I've never seen frozen tamarindo. But if it's literally just tamarindo pulp, then yeah, you can use that. And definitely you can always use frozen fruit. I've used frozen strawberries for my strawberry agua fresca, because the good thing about frozen fruit is that it's typically picked at peak ripeness. So you're getting a super flavorful fruit, even if it's frozen. And then you don't have to use as much ice because your agua fresca is going to come out cold because of the frozen fruit. So yes, I've used frozen pineapple, frozen mango, frozen strawberry. I've even used I did work with Dole, and I made an agua fresca with pineapple and blueberries, and they used the canned, because sometimes you're in a pinch and you don't have fresh fruit. And when I was having people over, I just made it with the canned pineapple and blueberries, and it was really good. Okay, so key ingredient for your agua is ice. You want to fill this up with ice.
That was a question that came in earlier that I knew you were going to answer.
Yeah, that was a really good one. And then I would
as you do that, have you ever used monk fruit as a sweetener?
I'm not a huge fan of monk fruit. I know some people have to use certain sweeteners because of for whatever health reasons or restrictions, or just because they don't want to use regular sugars. I don't like the flavor of monk fruit. You can use any sweetener you like, but to me, monk fruit has a specific flavor. So does stevia, and I've tried stevia because stevia is a natural sweetener. I bought the plant and planted it and grew it and tried to use it first I tasted it as a tea when I boiled it, and it has that stevia flavor, which I don't like. But yeah, you're also welcome to use any sweeteners that you like, really. Just know that it's going to have a little bit of it's going to impart that flavor onto your agua. So I like to use, okay, so for this, you can dip your pineapple in a little bit of chili salt and put it on the edge of your glass like this. which looks really pretty. And another option that I think is fancy that, oh shoot, what did I do with my, oh, here it is. Potato peeler. When you have your whole cucumber, but I already cut mine, so I'm just gonna use the peeler and slice a few thin pieces of the cucumber. And you could also make little cucumber ribbons. You can put it within your glass around so you can see it, or quickly, or you can thread it onto a little cute toothpick and put it over your glass.
Those cute little toothpicks are also found on Lola's Cocina Etsy page.
Yes. And you can have that. I found whenever I travel to Mexico, they always have the cutest, just the most beautiful garnishes. And what I love is that they're edible. They're not just for looks. They're like, oh, okay, I could eat this. It's not a fake anything.
If you
So
don't mind,
here's-
bring it up closer to your side camera as well. Yes, right there.
Yep.
That's the shot.
You can see how pretty the color is. It's not super green. It's not super yellow. It's kind of in between, like a honeydew color. Beautiful. So there's this one. Now I'm going to show you how I keep it simple with my agua de avena, but you can also bedazzle it a little bit. Let's see.
And another question that came in is, can you also blend some mint leaves? I think that was
Yes.
to the pineapple agua.
Oh yeah, I did. My original recipe does call for mint leaves. So I have, like I said, I have a lot of mint growing in my garden. So what I would do is, depending on how much mint you like, I think my recipe says 10 leaves. You can start with 10 leaves and blend that. And it sounds like a lot, but it's gonna give a really nice, subtle mint flavor. And it's also gonna be strained out. So yeah, that would be a really good addition. I love mint with my plain cucumber agua fresca, with my pineapple agua fresca, and it also is pretty good in your hibiscus agua fresca. Something else I've been noticing too, I've been going to different restaurants where they don't sweeten the aguas. Like there's a restaurant here in Denver, Oja, where they give you the agua fresca, the hibiscus, and it doesn't have any sweetener. And I actually really like it. I'd never tasted it without sugar until I went there. And it's really good. And that's probably when you're getting the most health benefits out of your agua. But they also will offer you, like a restaurant in Mexico that I was at recently offered a little shot glass of simple syrup that you can add to your drinks, which I thought was really a great way to, if you have a family, in my family, we have people who love sugar and then others who should not be consuming sugar because of health issues. So I think that's a great way to have an agua fresca with very minimal sugar and then just have your simple syrup on the side. And for anyone who's never made simple syrup, it's probably called simple syrup because it's so easy to make. You can use regular sugar, 1 cup, and then 1 cup of water, and boil that just until all the sugar dissolves. And that's your simple syrup. If you want it to be thicker, like for desserts, you can do 2 parts sugar to 1 part water, but just a basic simple syrup ingredient recipe is equal parts. So now I'm going to add my, let's see, ice to this one.
And Lola, we're just outside of the 10-minute mark, 10-minute warning.
Oh, perfect. Okay, then let me do one more trivia question. I thought of this one. What are some other names that have been thrown around for agua de avena here in the States? If you can think of 2, whoever comes up with 2 first is the grand prize winner. So with this one, you're always going to have to stir it up a little because the oats and the ingredients tend to settle at the bottom. So don't be alarmed if you check it. With all aguas frescas, it's always best to shake them or to stir them up before you serve. Here's this agua fresca, and you can add a little cinnamon. I wouldn't add a cinnamon stick because cinnamon's not cheap. I've seen people do that. I'm like, dang, where'd they get their cinnamon? Because it's not super cheap. But I do like to add dried oranges. I put these in the oven. You can either dip them in sugar or not dip them in sugar, and then put them on a baking sheet and cook them at about 200, 150 for as long as it takes to get them crispy. And then I just keep them in a jar in my pantry. and use them for cocktails or for garnishes for desserts or aguas frescas like today. So here's this, and you can either cut it and put it on the side or just serve it right on top so you can see. And then it gets a little soft when you, as it sits, and you can chomp on it after they're all edible. And that one came out really good also. Let me see. Okay, I just want to drop a few more. Shoot, I don't know where my fun facts went. Okay, a few other fun facts, which these will not be included in trivia, is that, can anyone take a guess where a hibiscus flower is from? I know there's some people who are pretty knowledgeable about this type of stuff, but hibiscus. Okay, it does grow in Oaxaca, and yep, West Africa is where it originates, which I don't think a lot of people know. When I began researching, I thought, okay, hibiscus flor de Jamaica, it has to be from Jamaica, but no, it's originally from West Africa and made its way to the Americas. I don't know if I mentioned this before, sugar is actually not native to the Americas either. It was brought over by European colonizers. So when the Aztecs used to make their aguas frescas, like I said, it was typically muddled fruit and water, and it wasn't until the Europeans introduced sugar that the Aztecs and the indigenous civilizations began using sugar in their different food recipes, which I thought was really interesting. And at that time, sugar was probably reserved for the elite because of its scarcity and because of how expensive it was when it was first introduced to the Americas. So I thought that was another fun fact. If you do travel to Mexico, if you haven't been to Mexico, you can always find aguas frescas in the mercados, the markets. You can find them with street vendors oftentimes have their big pictures and are selling them. And here in the States, sometimes they have them at restaurants. I don't typically find them in many places, but if you live in California, you can find them at the Mexican grocery stores like Northgate and Cardenas. Yeah, I love how Northgate even has like a little to-go container where you can buy your individual little pitcher and take it to go, which is really cool. So it wraps up our class. If there are no other questions, please feel free to reach out via email. My email is lola@Lola's Cocina. I'd love to know what other recipes you'd like to make. Like Comadre Nora said, we're going to be hosting a few of these in the future. Our next one is on September 6th. So if you drop in the chat anything that you'd like to make, keep in mind Mexican Independence Day is in September, so we can work around that theme. Or any other recipes from Latin America, we can reach out to some of the other comadres who specialize in a different type of cuisine. That would be fun too. But yeah, until then, I am available via social media, and via email is probably the best way to reach me. And you can always sign up for my newsletter, which is where I share the most recent recipes. And the link to that is also on my website.
And Lola, before we sign off, do you mind letting us know what a couple of names for oat milk are so we can select a winner?
Oh yeah, okay. Two ones that I know off the top of my head, people have called it oat chata, oat water, oatmeal water. Let me see. Yeah, oat milk and oat water. Yeah, any of those are good answers. Did anyone get that one?
Yeah, we're going to have a couple of winners because there's some people who typed in one name at first, and then when you said give two examples, they typed in right after that. Okay. So Christian Garcia.
Yay.
Kristen Garcia, I'm sorry. And Sarai Acosta, if you don't mind direct messaging me your contact info, we will get you set up.
Thank you. Please stay in touch. Like we said, tag us if you make any of these recipes. Reach out to us if you have any questions. Also, I created a code for anyone who's on the class for my online shop, Lola's Mercadito. If you type in Comadre when you're checking out, it's kind of, you have to know where to type it in so that the discount applies. You'll get a discount on any purchases you make from today until next Wednesday. I set it up for the week. So happy shopping and thank you for joining us.
Comadre Lola, that was so much fun. I have a quickie question. Can you freeze these and eat them like paletas or popsicles or something like that?
Yes, you can definitely freeze them. I would say the hibiscus one is a great one to freeze. Watermelon, I would strain it if I was going to freeze it. I do have a lot of paleta recipes on my website. The one thing I like about paletas is that it has more fruit, pulp and more fruit. So these are, you could definitely make paletas out of this easily. It's just going to be a more watery in texture versus the Mexican paletas that are really chunky with fruits. But yes, you can make paletas out of any of these really, and they'd be delicious.
This was so much fun.
Thank
Oat
you.
milk, my goodness, you pay a ton at the store. You can make it. Oh my
You can
goodness.
make it for cents at home, for pennies,
For
literally.
pennies. This is exciting. My husband is going to be so happy. Lola, it has been such a pleasure. And we're really looking forward. And Elise, thank you so much for helping out. And we are going to be waiting on bated breath for September the 6th to whatever it is that you end up bringing to us at that time will undoubtedly be a real pleasure to learn. Thank you for agreeing to do this for us. Yes. Comadres, thank you all very much. We will be sharing information from this with you individually, with our group at large, and with each of you individually. So, well, I mean, as a group, for all of you who registered. Thank you for being with us, and please tell others so that next time there's more.
Thank you.